Welcome back. I am Rajagopal Balasubramaniam, also known as Raj Balas, the president and founder of the Balas Agency in turn of the millennium, New York. I want to thank MT Karthik. Thank you again for hosting us here as we read aloud for the first and only time from a publication we printed 20 years ago. In September of 2001, the New York offices of the Balas Agency, representatives of writers, artists, and other creatives, received a series of anti-war texts from a client and distributed them as directed to press outlets, academic institutions, and selected individuals. The author of these essays was murdered in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, September 27th, 2001, between the hours of 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning. 5 typewritten essays, each numbered and titled A.W.M, were hand-delivered by messenger to the Balas Agency, beginning the evening of Sunday, September 16th, through Monday, the 25th. A few hours after the author of these works was pronounced dead, A.W.M. number 6 arrived at the offices of the Balas Agency. The envelope had been mailed by City Post the day before. Experts have authenticated the 6 documents to be the same source, the deceased. NYPD investigations into the killing remain open. No suspects have been taken into custody. No material witnesses have been detained. The Balas Agency offices in New York were closed April 15, 2002, after recording massive losses in the final financial quarter of 2001. All original work protected under copyright, all rights reserved. From the Balas Agency to all. Subject A.W.M. number 3. Date Thursday, 20th September 2001, 10:50 Eastern Daylight Time. Brooklyn, anti-war movement, A.W.M. Everything is about time frame and its suitability in places 13 hours apart from the U.S. Eastern Time, Bush-Cheney, to GMT, Blair-Chirac, to GMT +7, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. Tonight, at 2100 hours Eastern Time, U.S., the 20th of September, 2001, U.S. Executive Officer, Commander-in-Chief George W. Bush will address the U.S. That means at 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 1 to 3 in the morning in Great Britain, France, and Germany, and 3 o'clock in the morning until dawn from there to India. George W. Bush will be addressing the entire region and presumably the world. The anti-war movement gravely and politely requests that all future U.S., Afghan, Pakistan-related public communications intended for far-reaching broadcast be scheduled for morning in the U.S., noon GMT, and before sunset in Delhi. This would be one simple, non-violent, diplomatic way to decrease tension between all people of all places by allowing for proper rest between communication for all parties. It is 10:21 a.m. in New York. Between 6 and 9 p.m. tonight, advisors to the president will be discussing what he should say at 9 p.m. The anti-war movement notes nationwide disapproval in Pakistan of Pakistani leadership's role in the exchange of communications described above, as per the Gallup poll conducted on the 19th of September 2001, with far greater majority of Pakistani population in disagreement with communications on behalf of the United States. The anti-war movement demands a cessation to all military acts until proper diplomatic channels of communication have been established. Slow down time frame. Meanwhile, William Safire of the New York Times was presumably spiritually secure enough to write content for Voice of America broadcasts in the area. Quote, "The nation is on a kind of war footing. Even in peacetime, news credibility does not flow from splitting the moral difference between good and evil. In the climate of today's undeclared war, private media in democracies are free to take either or neither side, but U.S. taxpayer-supported broadcasting is supposed to be on our side. That's why we need an American signal in Afghanistan's 5 languages, with a clear, truthful message. Bin Laden and his gang are the cause of present and future misery, and the suicides who murder innocents are eternally punished by Allah." Close quote. Safire, New York Times, online, 20th September, 2001. Essay, op-ed. Using the name of God that belongs to another culture that is not your own is, to my understanding, universally reprehensible. The anti-war movement considers it certainly undiplomatic. The anti-war effort notes the presentation by CNN at 9 this morning, Eastern Time, of the Reuters translated communiqué from members of Afghanistan's Grand Islamic Council, who have rejected U.S. demands delivered by Pakistan that bin Laden be handed over to stand trial for the September 11th terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. The clerics said bin Laden should be asked to leave within a suitable time frame for the good of the country, but they did not suggest what would constitute a suitable time frame. Translation begins here. Quote, "The ulema of Afghanistan voice their sadness over deaths in America and hope that America does not attack Afghanistan, exerts complete patience and accuracy, and investigates the issue in its totality. The ulema of Afghanistan demand of America that the United Nations and the Organization of Islamic Conference investigate independently and precisely the recent events to clarify the reality and prevent harassment of innocent people. The United Nations and the OIC deliberate over the utterances of America's president, who has said that this war will be a crusade. This news has hurt the feelings of Muslims and has posed a major threat to the world. In order to avoid the current tumult, and also similar suspicion in the future, the High Council of the Honorable Ulema recommends to the Islamic Emirate to persuade Osama bin Laden to leave Afghanistan whenever possible and choose another place for himself. If in the light of the above-mentioned decisions, America does not agree and attacks Afghanistan, then, in the light of the sacred Sharia law, the following verdict is presented. Muslim country, jihad, holy war, becomes an order for the Muslims of that country. If infidels invade an Islamic country and that country does not have the ability to defend itself, jihad becomes an obligation on all Muslims. If infidels attack the soil of Muslims, they can, in time of need, ask Islamic and non-Islamic governments for help. If, at the time of America's attack, any Muslim, whether an Afghan or non-Afghan, cooperates with infidels, becomes an accomplice or a spy, that person is also punishable with death like the foreign invaders, close quote, end translation. The anti-war movement salutes the New York Times' B. Herbert for commendation of Giuliani during crisis. The Right Answer was the title. And heartily approves of the civic responsibility encouraged by Herbert when stating, quote, "Mr. Giuliani has been magnificent in the city's darkest hour. It would be a shame if he followed that up by attempting to dim the light of the city's democratic process," close quote. The anti-war effort also notes that the New York Times' P. Tyler and E. Sciolino, in a piece entitled "Bush Advisors Split on Scope of Retaliation," write, quote, "Secretary of State Colin Powell argued during weekend meetings with Mr. Bush that the administration must take the time to prepare the diplomatic groundwork for American action, first in Afghanistan by consulting with allies and building the case to justify American actions under international law. Quote, we can't solve everything in one blow, close quote, said an administration official who has sided with Secretary Powell. Mr. Bush and Secretary Powell also met with Russia's foreign minister, Igor D. Ivanov, who expressed Russian concerns about the use of military force in Central Asia, formerly under Soviet control. The Russians are providing intelligence information, and Mr. Ivanov pledged to cooperate in other ways, close quote. The anti-war movement encourages all to communicate with President George W. Bush and the U.S. media corporations that there is a large worldwide disapproval of war. The anti-war movement requests further the mobilization of all living Nobel Peace Prize winners and public figures opposed to armed conflict, human shields. Representing literary interests since 1972, securing the orientation of image since 1993, the Balas Agency. That from the 20th of September, 2001.